Hey, everybody, what's happening? Brent Axe here from syracuse.com. We're here live on the syracuse.com Syracuse Orange Basketball Facebook page, and we are here following a Syracuse loss to Virginia here on Tuesday night, a 68-61 loss for the Orange to the Cavaliers. So I would really appreciate it if you guys could hit that like button, hit that share button. I'll let people know that we are here and chatting with you after the game. Please leave your comments in there. We'll try and read some of those as we go, but you guys can kind of have a little conversation there in the comment section while we move along here. I want to thank our friends at the Bill Wrap Superstore. Get in there. See my guys at the Bill Wrap Superstore if you're looking for a new car, used car, pre-owned car here in the new year. I'm in that situation. I was just looking the other day, 97,000 miles on the odometer. Oh boy, time to look for a new car. And I'm going to go in and see my guys at the Bill Wrap Superstore, and you should as well here in the new year. So yeah, the Orange lose 68-61 to Virginia. And I mean, let's start right there. If you want to start with a positive, because there's a few things we have to go over here that are concerning for Syracuse, but they scored 61 points against Virginia. And they did it on only 3 assists, by the way, which is certainly an issue for Syracuse. Ball movement, a lot of ISO play there for Syracuse. They just cannot move the basketball the way they need to. But who would have thought they would only score 49 points against Notre Dame and score 61 points against one of the best defensive teams in college basketball, really the best defensive team in college basketball. So we'll start with a positive there, but certainly some things to go over here for the Orange. And one of those things is, let's start there on the offensive end. Okay, so you go over some numbers here. Frank Howard had 18 points in this game, but he was 6 of 20 shooting the basketball, had 7 turnovers. And you're going to have turnovers against a really good team like Virginia. You know, you got to expect with as much ball movement as I shouldn't say ball movement, as much ball handling as Frank Howard does as the point guard. He's going to have some turnovers, but they just seem to come in key spots. And the problem with Virginia is when you lose the ball, when you turn over the ball against Virginia, you're essentially losing 2 possessions because Virginia is ranked 351st in the country in number of possessions. That's dead last in the country, and that's just the way they want it. It's ball control. They call it embrace the pace, right? They want to work the ball, and they want to keep the ball away from you. So when you give the ball away against Virginia, it really kills you because you can't waste possessions against a team like that. So Frank Howard struggled. Tyus Battle really struggled in this game. He was 6 for 16 shooting the ball. He fouled out. He had the ball stripped away from him a number of times. Our boy TV Teddy Valentine and his crew probably missed a few calls, frankly, on Frank Howard. That one play, DeAndre Hunter just ripped the ball away from him, and that should have been a foul. And I think Tyus Battle got fouled a few times in the lane, but Tyus really struggled tonight. Didn't have the handle. He was trying to drive inside a few times, and it really just didn't have that normal swagger and that confidence that he has had, particularly scoring the basketball. So when you've got those guys combining to go, rough math here, 12 of 36, and those are 2 of your primary scorers, that's certainly not good news on the offensive end for the Orange. O'Shea Brissett had 16 points and 8 rebounds tonight. He shot 5 of 15, had a couple of 3-pointers, but I think he had some ill-timed shots in the second half. The guy you really got to give a lot of credit to tonight in this game is Pascal Chukwu, who had 10 points, 16 rebounds in this game. Clearly a career high for him. And of those 16 rebounds, 10 came on the offensive end for Pascal Chukwu. That was huge. Who briefly left this game. He banged knees with a Virginia player underneath. Thankfully, he was okay and came back in, not only for the sense of long-term, as this is not a very deep Syracuse team, but in the short term in this game, Syracuse needed him. He was crashing the offensive boards. And after 2 games in ACC play, where both Wake Forest and Notre Dame really wiped away Syracuse's edge on the boards, what did Jim Boeheim say after the Notre Dame game? That their rebounding edge this season was a myth. Well, the myth went away, at least in this game, as Syracuse out-rebounds Virginia 41-31. We mentioned all the offensive rebounds that the Orange got tonight, particularly from Pascal Chukwu. But, Matthew Moyer had 6 points and 5 rebounds, actually got some minutes tonight, did not enter Jim Boeheim's doghouse as quickly as he usually does, didn't really go there tonight. Merrick Dolezaj really struggled tonight. The only thing you see in his box score is a bunch of zeros and 2 fouls. And, against a Virginia team that loves to, help out on defense, loves to play rough, embraces the pace, as they say, embraces that slow pace, his style play doesn't bother Virginia. Merrick Dolezaj is the kind of player that can kind of come in and be a monkey wrench and, kind of throw things off for teams that love to run up and down the floor. That's not Virginia. They're not going to, be pushed back or intimidated by something like that. And Merrick Dolezaj, he is struggling in ACC play. And I think that was an expected thing, that he would, make that transition. These are bigger players, bigger teams, more physical teams that Syracuse is facing than what they did for the most part in non-conference play. And, we saw it when he came out there for that first exhibition game, how skinny he was. And now he's dealing with that in conference play. So they're going to have to make an adjustment on that. Certainly he can't get any bigger in the short term, but how he plays, how he gets around some defenses and sets himself up. They need him to rebound and do the dirty work and, make some passes. You're not really counting on him to score. So he's got to find a way for success there. I haven't read a lot of the comments coming in. I'm sure you guys will mention this, though, and we'll mention it here. I thought Jim Boeheim needed to press a lot earlier in this game. And I know the argument against the press is this is not a deep team, and if you press and you overpress, if you will, then teams can score on you in a hurry, and, it's all for naught. But once Syracuse went to the press late in the game, Virginia had 3 turnovers in 55 seconds. I think if Syracuse went to it even 2 or 3 possessions before that, it might have been a little more interesting down the line. Now, Virginia had a big advantage at the free throw line in this game, right? TV Teddy. I thought TV Teddy was going to retire. I wrote about this on syracuse.com yesterday. I hope you guys got a chance to see that. He had some very interesting comments to Seth Davis of The Athletic. So brief backstory, if you're not familiar, Ted Valentine, who they call TV Teddy for obvious reasons, he loves the camera, got into a situation last week. He's reffing the Florida State-North Carolina game. Joel Berry, the North Carolina point guard, senior point guard, most outstanding player of the Final Four last year, gets held by Florida State, and he wants to talk to TV Teddy about it. And TV Teddy, he literally pulls one of these. Turns his back. Sorry, I'm knocking things around here, but he turns his back on Joel Berry. What are you doing? What are you doing? Ridiculous. And that led to he got taken off a couple of games in the Big Ten. This was his first game back since that happened. So that free throw line discrepancy, a few of these came certainly when Syracuse was following and trying to get back in the game late, but it's noteworthy. Syracuse went to the free throw line, made 9 out of 11. Hashtag free throws matter. They did their job there. Virginia was 19 of 22. So, TV Teddy, whatever the case may be, Virginia made their free throws. I think if Syracuse went to the press a little earlier, who knows? Because you look at the last 2 comebacks that Syracuse had against Virginia, the famous one in the NCAA tournament, Malachi Richardson burying those threes, but it was the press that got Syracuse back into that. It was the press that got Syracuse back into the game last year at the Carrier Dome as well. 66-62 win for the Orange there, Boeheim's 1,000th win, and Virginia just crumbles under that press. So I think they really missed an opportunity there. I understand the depth thing and how it can backfire on you, but I think Boeheim overthought that a little bit. I think Boeheim needed to go to the press a little bit earlier in this game. I brought up the assist thing, and despite the fact that Syracuse only had 3 assists in this game, they scored 61 points. They made more shots than Virginia, but there is a real lack of ball movement on this team. There is a real lack of offensive flow on this team right now. It's a lot of ISO play, and what we saw tonight is how that can backfire on you. Look, Syracuse played well in the first half. If you go back, and I'll pull it up while we're yakking about it here. You go back to the first half stats, okay? At the end of the first half, Syracuse was playing with confidence. They only trailed 29-26. Both teams were shooting about 40%. Syracuse had a big edge on the boards at halftime, 20-13. They turned the ball over a little more. As I mentioned, Frank Howard really struggled on that end tonight. But, you go in down by 3 on the road at one of the toughest places to play and one of the best teams in college basketball right now. You got to be feeling pretty good about that. And unlike the Notre Dame game, Syracuse came out strong to start the second half of this basketball game. Pascal Chukwu hitting the boards. Tyus Battle had a steal. Matthew Moyer with a big bucket. O'Shea Brissett hit one of his threes to make it a 31-29 game. But what happened was, even though you look at the field goal percentages in this game, Syracuse, let's just get it officially here. Virginia was 20 of 53, 37%. Syracuse 23 of 60, 38%. Almost dead even on the shooting front. But what happened in that second half was not only the free throw discrepancy that we brought up, and Virginia piled up the free throws, they hit more threes. And Jerome came in the second half, and, I mean, that guy, the game was played in Charlottesville. He was hitting them from a different state. Because, look, in a couple of them, I would let him shoot that too. He's a good three-point shooter. You don't want to leave him completely wide open. But, I mean, the guy was shooting from way beyond even NBA range. So he gets going. Guy had 22 points for – what happened to the man bun, by the way? Bring it back. Come on, man. I dig those millennials and their man buns. So man bun or not, new hairstyle, Guy has 22 points in this game. He had 5 3-pointers, and, it was kind of a balanced effort there, and that was really it. On the offensive end, Virginia, patient, moves the ball, 15 assists for the Cavs tonight, and, they hit the threes and the free throws in the second half that gave them just enough separation. So Syracuse drops this one, and that's a top 3 team, and now you got another ranked team coming up on Saturday when the Orange get back on the court against Florida State. This felt like a game Syracuse could win. This felt like a game where, and boy, what a quality win it would be, especially you get a bounce back after Notre Dame. What a statement win it would have been to beat the number 3 team in the country, one of the best teams in the ACC. There was a good, first half, a little bit of the second half. There's a good 30 minutes or so that I felt like Syracuse could win this game. But, we mentioned the 3-point shots that Virginia was hitting, and it just seems like a few things will happen to Syracuse. They're going to run out of gas a little quicker because they're just, they're not a very deep team. When they're not hitting threes, and this is not a good 3-point shooting team generally, but when you've got Tyus Battle and Frank Howard off their game offensively, you mentioned the shooting stats with those two and what they combine to do, you're just going to come up a little short. And we mentioned possessions are gold against Virginia. If you take an errant shot, if, there's a couple of Tyus Battle shots he just kind of chucked up early. I mentioned O'Shea Brissett, as good as he played overall, kind of chucked up a couple of shots. You can't do that against Virginia because they'll just make you pay every single time. And this is despite the fact that Syracuse out-rebounded this team and did some things to stay in this game that, frankly, Syracuse overall, I wonder what you guys are saying here, but frankly, Syracuse played a lot better against Virginia than I thought they would, coming off a pretty poor performance against Notre Dame, despite the fact it's only a 2-point loss, on the road. And the way Virginia plays, just, the one advantage that Syracuse had, and I think we saw this, we saw it come through in this game, was what Virginia does to you with their style of play is they take you out of yours. For example, you look at Virginia, they played North Carolina the other night. North Carolina loves to go up and down the floor. They love to play a fast-paced style of offense and score. And, when you play Virginia, they just kind of shrink you down and make you conform to what they do, take possessions away. North Carolina averages 75 possessions per game. They had 58 against Virginia, shot 29%. The advantage that Syracuse had in this game was they're used to a slow pace. They're one of the slowest paces in the country. They're used to not scoring a lot. They're used to playing games in the 50s and 60s. So they would not be thrown off by that. They would not be intimidated by that. Teams have to make that adjustment throughout the game. Syracuse did not have to make that adjustment in this game, and I think that panned out because they came out and looked comfortable in the first half. They could, once they adjusted to Virginia's defense, which everybody has to do, it can just be suffocating if you're not ready for it, they played pretty well. They stayed in this game. They made enough key shots. They took a lead in the first half. We mentioned how close it was at halftime, but you got to have the guns. You got to have the depth. And you need one of your key offensive players to come through in the second half and make just enough plays, and Syracuse just didn't get that tonight. All right, so let's see what some of the comments are here. Garth says, guys got heart. They really felt for Battle. Post-game at Notre Dame. They do have heart. This team does play hard. This team, when they really turn it on, they do gut it out. They just, they don't have the talent and the offensive skill set and the organization right now to really kind of match that heart with talent right now. Joe says, can you take Tyus off the pedestal now, I believe? He's overrated and forces too many bad shots. I don't think Tyus Bad is overrated. I haven't checked in with some NBA scout sources of mine. I'm going to do that at some point soon just to see what the buzz is, what the, how the scouts are evaluating him. Tyus Battle's a talented player. Tyus Battle has some flaws. So you look at the strengths, he can drive, he can shoot the three, he is a great penetrator, he's, a pretty good defender at the top of that zone. The weaknesses for Tyus are he can't go to his left. And we saw that tonight. Virginia really exposed that. That's an issue he's got to work on. You've got to be a balanced player. You can't have everybody kind of shove you to the weak side. He can't go to his left. But I wouldn't say he's overrated. I think he's getting prime attention from opposing teams, and they're studying the scouting reports on him. Notice how many times Virginia knocked the ball away from Tyus when he drove in this game. They know how to get after him, particularly push him to his left. So is Tyus Battle overrated? No. I mean, this is a guy who I think could still end up being a first-round NBA draft pick this year. You got to remember how scouts look at things and how they evaluate it. They look at skill set. They look at players. Certainly how you do on your team and how you affect your team is put into that. But, it wouldn't be fair to say Tyus Battle's been at his best lately. Certainly was not at his best in this game, but I think Battle is in the same position that Frank Howard is in. They're the two ISO players that feel like they got to push everything. And now that O'Shea Brissett is going to get left open to take shots, you've got to find some balance there. And I say ball movement and get some offensive organization. To be fair to Frank Howard, who's running the point on this team, where are you going to go? Pascal Chukwu had a great game tonight, but it was all off rebounds. He hit 10 offensive rebounds in this game. You're not setting up plays to kick it inside to Pascal Chukwu. As a matter of fact, Virginia didn't even defend him at times. You got a guy 7'2" there, and they didn't even bother. They're running pick and rolls and running screens at the top, way up on the free throw line, not even caring what Pascal Chukwu was doing. I don't want to disrespect the kid. He had a great game tonight, but who are you running offense for? Matthew Moyer really has to be right by the hoop to get him the ball. We mentioned how offensively challenged at this point Merrick Dolezaj is. So, I don't blame Frank, Tyus Battle, and O'Shea Brissett for doing that because they're really the three key offensive guys. Ron says depth will be the death of this team. It's hard to disagree with that, Ron. I mean, let's think about it. This is a Syracuse team that plays essentially 6.5 people. Because while you technically have 8 scholarship players, Barama Sidibe, is not playing significant minutes. Howard Washington certainly is not playing significant minutes. That was interesting. A lot of you guys, I'm sure, caught this in the in the first half, when behind benches Frank Howard with 14 minutes to go in the first half, because he had 2 travels. He had a couple of turnovers. It was a very quick visit to the bench. He comes right back out there and actually ripped off a few big plays after that, made a few scoring plays after that. So, you talk about depth. This team doesn't have it. They're playing 6.5 guys, and it's not like you're holding anything back there because Barama and Howard Washington, maybe you can run that 3-guard lineup a little more, but now you're hurting on the defensive end. For every reaction, what's the old adage there? For every, action, there's a, equal reaction. And that's the thing with Syracuse. You play that 3-guard lineup more, you're weaker on defense. Barama's not quite ready to give you heavy minutes. And boy, we were going to get a big test on that if Pascal Chukwu's knee didn't hold up. But thankfully it did, and he was back out there. Roland here in the comments says, I think this team will win games. Great performance against a great defensive team that gives me hope. They've been close the past couple of games, despite some of the flaws we brought up. The Notre Dame game, as we said, was a 2-point game. Wake Forest was a 6-point game. And this was, a 7-point loss to a team that's number 3 in the country. And what happens is Syracuse gets Florida State next, and that would be a huge opportunity win for the Orange if they can somehow get that. But then you get Pitt, BC, Pitt. I mean, that's a good stretch of games you got to win. And some will say, I'll get 2 out of 3. Now, see, you got to sweep those games because by dropping some of these earlier games, you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball. Pitt's the worst team in the ACC, Boston College beat Duke, and they shot the lights out that day, and that's an impressive win for them. But Syracuse can beat Boston College. So Florida State's the next opportunity to get a quality win, to win up, if you will, to beat one of the better teams in the ACC. I think their style of play is much more suited to what Syracuse wants to do. Generally, even though Syracuse is a slow-paced team, I mean, they want to try and score. They want to try and go out there and run an offense. But because they're not a team capable of doing that, they kind of have to play the Virginia role in that Florida State game coming up. They got to bring Florida State kind of down to their level. And it was encouraging that Syracuse got back on the rebounding end tonight. I can't expect Pascal Chukwu would have 16 rebounds next game, but the mentality he hit the boards with is something that's got to carry over into that next game. So there are some encouraging things to take away from this game, certainly. But the depth is an issue. I think not going to the press was a mistake on Syracuse's front. And, you can't have your two best offensive players combined for the numbers 12 of 36 that Frank Howard and Tyus Battle did tonight. So that's ultimately what sunk the Orange's battleship here against Virginia. They lose 68-61. And they're at it again, as we mentioned, against Florida State on Saturday. So we'll be right back here after that game on Facebook Live. And if you missed any part of this or want to rewatch it or share it, we'll put it up on the syracuse.com YouTube page, on the Orange Sports page. I always insert it into my recap on syracuse.com. Hope you guys can check that out tomorrow morning and read that and all the coverage we've got from the Syracuse-Virginia game up on syracuse.com. Thanks for hanging with us here on Facebook Live. Thanks to our friends at the Bill Wrap Superstore. Thanks to you for coming by. And as mentioned, we'll be back on Saturday after the Orange take on Florida State. Have a great rest of your night. Not much left in this night. Have a great day on Wednesday and the rest of your week. And we'll talk to you again after the Orange take on the Seminoles.